All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be diving back into the Matt Walsh and Joe Rogan interview that was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And this clip taken is titled "Trans Kids Are Guinea Pigs, Joe Rogan Experience." We're about to get into this. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe while we're watching. Now let's roll it.
The suicide stuff is it's just so sinister because this is the emotional blackmail that they tell parents that, your daughter identifies as your son now. And then the now classic line is, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? Like, you have to affirm this or your daughter's going to kill himself. And so many parents, especially, you go back a couple of years when this conversation wasn't being had at a very visible level, they don't know what to do. They're panicked. And they've just been told by a mental health provider who they trust that if they don't go along with their child's delusion, that their child's going to commit suicide. So I can understand when you're told that you're going to kind of panic, but it's not true. The evidence, in fact, tells us the opposite, that suicidality, we cover this in the film, Scott Nugent mentions it, that the only reliable long-term study we have on this shows that suicidality is the highest years after transition. That's the highest point for suicidality among trans people. But the other problem, too, is that there are a couple of maybe reliable long-term studies, but there aren't that many because we haven't done this to people on this scale ever before in human history. So
just to backtrack on what Matt Walsh was talking about when he first started, I don't want to sound like a denier of science, right? Like a denier of hospitals and going to see the doctor. Obviously, if you're getting your physical, your routine physical, you're going for something routine, listen to your doctor. But these health officials that try to tell parents tell parents they need to affirm their kids, tell parents that if they don't, then their kid's gonna commit suicide. Me personally, I think that you need to have a wall up to protect against that stuff. I understand you as a parent might not know what to do. Your kid's stressing you out, and now you hear something from the doctor, and you just want to solve the problem, so you listen to them. But I don't know, man. I think before you just listen to what you hear from a health official telling you something like that, you got to soul search. You got to talk to a friend, talk to God, talk to anyone, Jesus. But don't blindly just follow what these health officials are saying, man, because that's a part of the reason why we are where we are today with this issue here.
The current crop of especially trans, quote unquote, trans kids, they're the guinea pigs. We're experimenting on them. And they're making a lot of, the healthcare providers are making a lot of promises about how this is going to turn out when they can't possibly know this because we've never done it before.
Well, that's one of the more sinister aspects of it for me.
Healthcare providers also making a lot of money too.
Because we've never done it before.
Well, that's one of the more sinister aspects of it for me is the way they're encouraging hormone blockers and hormone transition for people that are going through puberty or haven't gone through puberty. We don't have any long-term studies on this, and now they're finding that these hormone blockers aren't innocuous and that they cause a lot of health problems. And they're saying this now out in the open when people have been for years, the last few years, promoting this as if it's a pause button.
And it's just absurd because that's not how human biology works.
No.
I think there's a lot of what they claim. Intuitively, it doesn't make any sense. It defies common sense, even before you look at the data. And then you look at the data and you realize that, it doesn't make any sense. But even before that, you can't, what's being claimed? That you can kind of put a child in a state of suspended animation where they're kind of lingering on pause. That's not how the human body works. What you can do is try to suppress the human body's normal natural functions. But when you do that, it's a trade-off. There are consequences. There are always consequences. That's how nature works.
And I was just gonna say, it's like you're intervening with the natural way of things. If someone was born a boy, if someone was born with male genitalia, born a baby boy, grows up to be a man or grows up to be a young boy, and now you come along and you want to snip things and hormone blockers and all of this stuff. It's going against his natural life path, just the natural order, just nature itself. And when you go against nature will fight back. It'll fight back. It'll reveal to you why you shouldn't have.
And we also know that what are the drugs they use? Like Lupron is a drug they use as a puberty blocker, and it's just a fact that this drug, number one, to begin with, is a cancer drug, originally for older men who have prostate cancer. And they've also used it to chemically castrate sex offenders. I think in Georgia, they've used it for that purpose. So it's an actual chemical castration drug used off-label for, 10-year-old or 11-year-old, 12-year-old kids.
With no long-term data.
Right.
And
because there can't be.
They're promoting it as this is the silver bullet. This is going to fix you.
Right.
This is the thing that's going to fix all your ails.
And the other thing they do is they say that, well, we don't, as this conversation has grown about actual surgery for children, which is happening all across the country, but what they always say is that, well, that's not, that's not really what's happening, especially younger kids. It's puberty blockers, not surgery. And yeah, it might be true that they're not performing actual surgeries on 12-year-olds at this point. At least that's not a common practice. Mm-hmm. But what they don't tell you is that once you put the kid on this conveyor belt, they're going to probably stay on it all the way to the surgery. You've put them in the system. You've put them on. It is like
you putting them on a fast track right to the surgery. Because once they do this and do this and do this, it's like a system. It's like a system where you got to do A and B before you get to C. You putting them on the fast track right to it.
All the way to the surgery. You've put them in the system. You've put them on. It is like a conveyor belt system, and they're most likely not going to jump off. You start with the puberty blockers. In almost every case, it's going to lead to the to hormone therapy, and then in a great many cases, they go from there to surgery. And the other thing too is that as they're going along with these drugs, you are taking away, you're sterilizing them. You're oftentimes permanently taking away their future fertility. So, you've taken away their capacity to, like a girl, you've made it so she'll never be able to have kids in the future. You've already taken that from her. She has given it up before she even could know what she's even given up. And then for her, it's kind of a logical process. Well, I've already given that up, so I might as well go get the double mastectomy, and then all down the line.
And that's exactly why we say that kids don't really have the capacity to make decisions like this. Like he just said, they're giving up something that they don't even know, they haven't even been able to experience, and they're just giving it away at childhood. And parents are actually signing off for the okay on this. Man, this just pisses me off, honestly.
The line.
And then there's the euphoria that comes with taking testosterone that happens to them. Like almost immediately they have a different feeling and they go, oh, this is how I should have been all along. Now the medicine is helping me. It's also, if someone identifies as male or identifies as female, and this is just how they feel they are, what's the logical argument for starting to give them hormones that are not natural in their system?
I don't think there is a logical argument. The only argument you ever hear from them, and I know because I've asked, is the emotional blackmail argument that you have to do it, because if you don't, they're going to kill them. But another point about the suicide thing I want to mention is that we know that trans identification has risen in the youngest generation, has risen like 20 or 30 fold, right? And what they tell us on the left is that, well, that's not social contagion. This is just people now feel comfortable to live their truth. So there's always been this many trans people. It's just that in the past they couldn't announce that to the world because it was an unaffirming society.
Right. So they really want to sit up here and pretend that all these trans people, there's always been this many trans people. None of the media, none of the messages and the images, things that they push have anything to do with people becoming trans. Yeah, that's BS.
Announce that to the world because it was an unaffirming society. Right. So they tell you, well, if that's true, and you had like millions of trans people in the past who are living in these unaffirming societies, and we're also told that if you don't affirm trans people, it leads to suicide, then shouldn't we see, if we look back through history, just this unbroken mass epidemic across the world of people killing themselves in mass because they're not being affirmed as trans? That's not what we find. Shouldn't we see, like, you should be able to go back to 1850 and find millions of kids killing themselves because it turns out they were trans and not being affirmed. Yeah. But this child suicide,
no history,
almost like didn't exist up until very recently. It was basically unheard of. So it's just everything they say. It just when you apply a little bit of common sense, it all starts to break down.
Yeah,
I'm a senior in high.
And that's
The
why
suicide stuff.
That's why I wanted to hear about this from Matt Walsh and Joe Rogan because, well, mostly Matt Walsh, because Matt Walsh is like a pioneer in this movement against this stuff. So, you know, his take on it is I like it. I like his take on it. This really is just it's just young impressionable minds being taken advantage of. That's what this boils down to at the end of the day. And these companies benefit from it financially. It's just not right. It's just not right. But let me know how you feel about this in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Till next time, you guys, I'm out. Peace.